Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Falcons Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am Aaron Freeman, joined by my co-host Scott Karasik. This is our final show of 2014. The Falcons' 2014 season is over. They are not playing in the playoffs, unfortunately. They have fired their head coach, Mike Smith. We will talk about that and their upcoming coaching changes. And we will be discussing your mailbag questions at the end of the show. Scott, the Falcons, as I said, the Falcons aren't in the playoffs because they lost to the Carolina Panthers in Week 17. Um, I don't know how much time you want to spend on that game, but we always try to talk about a little bit about the positives. So, what were some of the positives that you saw in that game?
Well, I am going to touch on one negative. The offense fell apart because the offensive line got injured and fell apart, and I was not exactly happy with what happened. Ryan Schrader played his worst game of the season, going against his toughest opponent in Charles Johnson. I wasn't happy that he caved like the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, but it is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this line was done the minute they lined up. Like there was just nothing they could do that could really fix it.
Yeah.
They were done. Like there was no way with Lotulele and Asamoah was fighting that back injury. No way he was going to guard Lotulele perfectly. I mean there were too many extenuating circumstances to make it worth a great, like, Atlanta wasn't going to win that game the way that it played out. It just wasn't going to happen. I wish that it was going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. On defense, the run defense was garbage. The pass defense was solid, but they only guarded on, 17 passes? Like, we could say pass rush was an issue, but when you let them run a total of 16 plays, 17 passing plays, it's not really an issue. Let's be honest here. And yet Cam Newton had 6 runs and like 4 of them were scrambles on passing plays, but I'm just aggravated. It was time for Mike Smith to go.
Yeah. I thought the defense, relatively speaking to some of the performances this year, had probably one of their better games. Obviously it doesn't look that way because the Panthers scored 34 points, but a lot of those were gifts, given by the offense and turnovers. But it wasn't a great game for the Falcons. So there aren't a whole lot of positives that could take away from it.
Outside of the first 2 drives where they gave up 10 points, I don't think that the defense really was an issue. So I'll agree with you there. The refs in this game were awful, too.
Yeah, I usually try to cut the refs some slack because everybody's going to miss some calls here or there, but it did seem like it was very lopsided game from an officiating standpoint against the Falcons.
Oh my God, the face masking calls that weren't called on the fumble. Roddy White got pulled down by his dreads on the first pick 6 by Roman Harper, and people act like it was all on Matt. Dude, the guy got pulled down by his dreads. Had he not been pulled down by his dreads, it would have been a tough catch for Roddy, but he could have made the catch.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand why people are like, oh, you go back and you watch the All-22 on these plays. Roman Harper should have been – that play should have been brought back for DPI. The Trey Boston interception, that was the only legitimate, ball that Matt Ryan probably shouldn't have thrown. Or at least not to who he threw it to the way he threw it.
Yeah.
Or really who he threw it to. Because, let's be honest, I don't see a way Harry Douglas is on the roster next year unless the new coach is keeping Dirk Cutter.
I don't know, man. Harry Douglas has survived so long on this team that it would not shock me again if he survives one more year.
Thankfully, Aaron, it's the final year of his contract.
Yeah, so it's one more year, thankfully. But hopefully it could be 0 more years. But whatever, we'll see what happens.
But if they do let Harry go, they'll save $3.5 million.
Yeah, that's pretty good incentive. I think you can get someone who's just as good as Harry Douglas for a fraction of that money. So, it
So
makes
we've already
sense.
got $30 million.
Uh-huh.
You can add Harry. You can add Steven Jackson because he's either retiring or he's just gone. And then you can add in Sam Baker's. Oh, wow. I've been saying Sam Baker was $4.5 million. It's really $5.25 million. My apologies. So Sam Baker adds 5.25. Atlanta could have up to $42.5 million in cap space. They've got a ton of flexibility. And that's just cutting the regular guys that you know you're going to cut. The three guys that have shown that they're worth cutting. There's so much talent on this team that I know you don't agree with that, but I think there's a lot of talent on this team when they're healthy. When you don't have Robert Alford, William Moore, Sean Weatherspoon all on the injured reserve, the defense looks a lot better.
I would agree with that. I think one of the reasons why I was saying there wasn't talent because they had injuries to William Moore and Sean Weatherspoon, and if they're not playing, then they're not contributing. So
when two of your best, I'd say best four defenders are injured and played a total of 5 games for the Falcons this year, it's gonna hurt the way your defense looks.
Yeah.
No matter how you cut it.
So, Scott, you want to talk about this coaching situation?
We might as well.
Well, I had a series of questions and I think the first one is an obvious answer. Did Mike Smith deserve to be fired?
There's a bear shit in the woods.
Okay. Well, there it is, folks. That's your official word.
Does Pamela Anderson still have fake boobs? Yes. Of course.
Okay. Well, just in case someone wasn't watching this show for the last 3 months, I guess, maybe this is the first show they're watching. They may not know what our answer to that question is. But there it is. And I agree with Scott. I'm probably more pro Mike Smith than Scott is, but I do think that it's time for the team to go in a new direction. I don't think that he's going to be able to get this team out of the hole that they've found themselves in the last 2 years.
If by pro Mike Smith you mean I'm buying his ticket out of Atlanta, and you're like, he could stay if he wants to be like the defensive line coach. That's our difference. You'd be like, yeah, he could stay if he wants to be like a nothing coach. And
no, it'd be like you're driving the cab to get him to the airport, and I'm saying, hey, Mike Smith, how about you stay for dinner, and then Scott can drive you to the airport. I just for a couple more hours, and then you can go to the airport.
I've already bought his ticket to Oakland. Let's be honest.
Okay. All right. So next question I have is, what do you think Mike Smith's legacy is going to be?
He will sadly be remembered as the best coach in Falcons history, until whoever this next coach comes in and wins the Super Bowl. But I'm optimistic.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I wouldn't say sadly, but okay, yeah. I like the Mike Smith.
So Mike Smith deserved to be the guy who brought the Falcons over the hump. Unfortunately, he's not the guy that can bring the Falcons over the hump. He's the guy that builds the foundation for the next coach.
Okay, that's fair.
How do I put this? He is Tony Dungy from Tampa.
Okay, that's a good comparison.
Atlanta's roster is not as talent poor as it was in 2007. It's
Okay.
not as awful as it was in 2007. Its coaching isn't as bad as it was in 2007. The player development's not as bad as it was in 2007, but it's still not championship caliber. And that's the issue we all have. Mike Smith wasn't brought in to win championships. Mike Smith was brought in to turn the Falcons around from a 4-12 season where Michael Vick destroyed the image of the franchise, where the Falcons were just god awful on all sides of the ball, where they had a nasty attitude around the entire team. Nobody wanted to be in Atlanta. Now, people do want to be in Atlanta. Atlanta's looked at as a good situation. There's a legitimate franchise quarterback who can actually throw the damn ball. You got a top 10 wide receiver, probably top 5 when he's healthy. You've got a top 5 cornerback. You've got a top 5, or you got the potential to have a top 10 defense next year with a couple good pass rushers and some health. I mean, Atlanta's got talent, and Atlanta has the ability to win a lot of games next year. They could have easily won 10 games this year, I think, if the offensive line had just stayed healthy. Outside of like Lamar Holmes, I thought the offensive line played better in those first 4 games than they did all season. When you take out Lamar Holmes and put in Ryan Schrader in that spot next year, I think you're going to have a way better offensive line than anything Atlanta's had since 1998.
Okay.
Just give me a guy who'll do zone blocking for the running game, and you'll really have a hell of an offensive line.
I would
Run
agree.
that Gibbsian scheme, I'll be happy.
Marshawn Lynch. I'm sorry, something in my throat. Maybe we could sign Marshawn Lynch.
Or maybe you don't have to waste all that money and sign someone who's, I don't know, not on the downside of his career for once.
Well, I'm just doing what Dimitrov would do.
I'm going to go with what a smart GM will do. And I think Dimitrov has learned from some of his mistakes. Maybe not all of them, but some of his mistakes. And I think Dimitrov will probably not do that.
Okay.
He might take Todd Gurley in the second round or something stupid like that, but I don't see him. Yes, I did say it was stupid, because as much as everybody likes Todd Gurley, you can get away with a 3rd round or 4th round running back like Mike Davis. Maybe not like a 6th round running back all the time. I still say take one in the 6th.
Okay.
But I do think you can get away with a 3rd round running back like a Mike Davis from South Carolina, who reminds me a lot of another Falcons running back from yesteryear. Our good friend, Fat Mike Turner.
Good old Fat Mike Turner.
Who doesn't love Fat Michael Turner?
Yeah, like the Turner that was just fat but not too fat. Yeah, that Turner was.
The 2008 to 2010 Michael Turner.
Yeah. Yes.
That's Mike Davis.
That was a great Michael Turner.
I'd even say, since you got 2 7th round picks, why not spend one of them on St. John Days to go with it? You got Mike Davis, you got St. John Days, you got Devontae Freeman, and then you got a guy like, what's his name? You got Anton Smith that you'll bring back, and you got Jerome Smith. Just have them all compete. Winner gets the job. No one's got a lot of money invested, so who gives a damn who it is? Then you have 4 just young running backs, and then you sign Anton, of course. But Anton's not going to be expensive. 3 years, maybe $1 million a year at most.
That's probably true.
I mean, if he commands more than that, you can let him walk. I'm gonna be honest. I know that probably sounds like blasphemy to everybody, but he's not that good to where you want to, like I said, blasphemy. He's not that good to where it's absolutely essential that you keep Anton Smith. He's a gunner who plays like a gunner, who looks like a gunner, who, when he does get his 5-6 carries, has one awesome carry and then 4 like 2-yarders.
See, Scott, you sound awfully like me when I'm describing certain players on our defense, but I won't hold you to that too much.
Again, where does the guy win? Out in space. If you re-sign Anton Smith, you don't re-sign him as a running back. You re-sign him as a slot receiver.
Okay, I don't disagree.
You put him in space. That's where he wins. As a slot receiver, yeah, sign him for $1.5 million a year, because that's where he's going to win. You run those underneath drags for him that Harry Douglas was doing earlier in the year, or not earlier in the year, when like Harry Douglas had his 2 big games, it was all on underneath drags. You run those with Anton Smith, he's going to get, I don't know, a touchdown quite often. He'll get 20-plus yards quite often because he's actually explosive. I just think they've been misusing him.
Okay. Scott, I got another question for you. Should the Falcons have cleaned house, or are they smart for keeping Thomas Dimitroff?
It is tough, and I know you're going to hate my answer for this. It is tough to find GMs that are as good, yes, I said it, as good as Thomas Dimitroff is.
Okay.
Do they exist? Yes. Are they easy to find? Not by it. No, they're not. It's tough to find a GM who's good at drafting, good at free agents, good at all. Like, he's not great at any one spot, but he's above league average on all of them. He's not Ozzie Newsome or the guy in Green Bay, Ted Thompson. He's awful in free agency. He's absolutely terrible in free agency. Aaron, you would hate him because he doesn't sign anybody but undrafted free agents during the season.
Well, he did get Julius.
Because of coaching. Because the coaches know what the hell they're doing. And because he's on the same page with his coaches. That's why I do like Thomas Dimitroff. Because he'll sit there and he'll work with his coaches. If Rex Ryan comes in, Todd Bowles comes in, one of these guys comes in and says, hey, this player profile you've got, change it. I want this guy now. He'll go get him. I hate to say it, but that's got a lot to do with why they've got Soliai right now.
Okay.
It wasn't that article you were like, yeah, I think it was a lot of smoke puffed up. Maybe it was a little bit of smoke puffed up, but it wouldn't have been, it's not completely false either.
I would say that, yeah. I think, Dimitrov probably didn't want a pass rusher, but it's nice, that's good to hear now when, you've had 7 years to get that pass rusher and you just haven't gotten it. And so it's like now, we wanted it last year. And it's like, well, you could, even if Mike Smith wanted to get those guys to build inside out, they ended up, the best pass rusher they ended up getting was Tyler Starr in the 7th round. Like, you couldn't have convinced Mike Smith otherwise. Was Mike Smith saying, like, no, we're not getting a pass rusher until we draft Tyler Starr? You couldn't sign anybody in free agency. You couldn't trade for anybody. That's what I kind of have an issue with, as if, Dimitroff was really trying to get this pass rusher when he had plenty of opportunities to do so.
No, and I agree with that. I'm not saying that that's not right. I'm just saying Dimitroff might have been, oh, hey, we need to get a pass rusher, but not have the opportunity until Tyler Starr. There's only so much you can do in the draft in free agency. Now, he should have not gone after Tyson Jackson. But I think Pioli was in his ear on Tyson Jackson pushing for that one.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
I think, and there's nothing we can really say about that. I do think Soliai was being pushed for by Mike Nolan.
Yeah.
Hey, my defense isn't working because I need a nose tackle. Go get me my guy from Miami. I know he knows my scheme. I know he's gonna do well in it. The issue that I have is that these coaches were saying, "Oh, hey, Jonathan Massaqua's ready. He's gonna start for us this year. Oh, hey, this guy's ready. He's gonna start for us this year." And then they bench him. You don't do that.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue is that the coaches had no idea what to do with the talent. Because if you played the guys in the right damn spots on defense, they don't look half as bad as they do. And if you do it for the entire season, and they get to develop and actually play and actually fit the roles that they're supposed to be in, you've got a much better defense by the end of the year. Again, with a better coach, Atlanta's a 12-4, 13-3 team next year. I'm not saying don't add pass rushers. You got a number 8 overall pick. You've got a whole bunch of cap room. If you can go get Ndamukong Suh, cut Tyson Jackson post June 1st. Do it. Don't even worry about it. If you can go get, a guy like Dante Fowler in the top of the draft, or Shane Ray, or someone, Bud Dupree, someone of that ilk, get him. You can get Vic Beasley, get him. You got the number 8 overall pick. There's probably 10 pass rushers you could take that high, and no one would complain about any of them. With just how fast off the ball, how strong, how good they are. No one would have it. So you get a guy top 10, you get a guy in free agency. I think if you're going to get a guy in free agency, you get a guy like Sue, because they've got the money to do it. That's what I would do. That'd be the big move I'd go after. You want a nastier, tougher team? Go get Sue. Cut Tyson Jackson.
I'd be all for that.
I'm all for that too. I say sign Todd Bowles as the head coach. Go out and get Ndamukong Suh. Those two moves alone would transform the defense. Draft the guy top 10 as a pass rusher. Play Massaquoi more. Play Maponga more. Play Tyler Starr more. Play any of these guys more. But don't. And then the pass rushers that are out there in free agency this offseason, it's like JPP. If you can get him, tell him to lose 15, 20 pounds, get back down to his playing weight in college, at 260, 270 instead of the 290 he's at now, do it.
So, Scott, let's talk about some of these coaches that the Falcons are bringing in to interview. As of today, we've had 6 coaches that Falcons have requested interviews or scheduled interviews for: Adam Gase, Dan Quinn, Todd Bowles, Terrell Austin, Josh McDaniels, and Rex Ryan. Do you have any sort of quick takes on any of these guys? Do any of these guys sort of stand out as your favorite guys? If you could rank them 1 through 6, how would you rank them?
Ooh, that's tough. All right, so if I'm going to rank them 1 through 6, and the biggest 3 things that I want to see are adaptability to the players, motivation, because those are the top 2 by far. Adaptability, motivation, and then aggression in their schemes. I want Todd Bowles, number 1. Okay. I want Rex Ryan, number 2. I'd say Adam Gase, a good 3rd, and then Terrell Austin, number 4. And then McDaniels and Quinn, I don't like. Because they're not the brains of their operations.
Okay. All right. I would probably put him Terrell Austin number 1 because he went to Pitt, so therefore he's clearly the superior coach. Number 2, I'd probably put Gase. 3 would be Bowles. 4 probably Quinn. 5 Rex Ryan, and then 6 probably Josh McDaniels.
I don't want McDaniels or Quinn, because Quinn is not the brainchild of his own defense. Pete Carroll is.
That's true.
It's not anywhere close. Pete Carroll's the brainchild of that defense. Pete Carroll's the one who designed the whole thing. And they've had 2 different defensive coordinators now. The scheme hasn't changed 1 iota. It's a Pete Carroll design, and you can see it. And then Josh McDaniels, he's only had success in New England, and then he looked like an offense-only coach in Denver. Man, his biggest need is defense. Why would you go out and get an offensive coach?
Well, he did bring in Mike Nolan to Denver, and they were pretty good defense for that half season that they were winning.
Yeah, for a half season.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm for me with McDaniels and Rex Ryan, they're retreads, and at this point, I think we know what they are, and I think what they are okay coaches, but I don't think you're going to win a Super Bowl with either of those coaches. So I'd much rather take a chance with them. I think Rex and Mike Smith are two peas in the same pod.
I think the issue with Rex is he doesn't know how to coach offense. But he uses his players in the right spots on defense. You got to get the right offensive coordinator with Rex. That's the issue. The question is, who is that guy? But you got to get the right offensive coordinator with Rex, and you'll be fine.
See, I think that if we're hiring a coach and basically our success hinges on who he's going to hire as our offensive coordinator, and so far his success rate is Marty Mornhinweg, and the rumors are that he's going to keep Dirk Cutter. I'm like, that's not the dude for us. I need someone who's going to bring something special to this offense. I mean, Adam Gase might be that guy, but to me, Rex he is what he is, and he's not going to be better than what he's been in New York, in Atlanta, even with Matt Ryan.
See, I don't mind Dirk Cutter, but I'm one of the few.
He's okay. I mean, there are worse offensive coordinators we could have, but I think we've seen what the best he could throw at us. And, without Tony Gonzalez, he ain't bringing squat to the table.
And that's fair.
So, Scott, are there any assistants currently on the Falcons that you would like to see kept, or are there any assistants that you would be like, no, everybody else can stay, but that one guy, he's got to go?
Oof. That's tough. There are a ton of assistants that need to be kept. I would honestly say Tim Lewis, the cornerbacks coach, he did a bang-up job this year. I think Joe Dana, the safeties coach, did a great job. I think Brian Cox needs to be kept as a defensive interior coach, but bring in a new outside guy, obviously. I just think Cox is the right guy for Soliai, Hageman, those guys. It's not his fault Tyson Jackson has no talent.
Yeah, that's true.
Because when you look at everybody else on the interior, they looked fine. Like Babineau, Peters, Soliai, Hageman. He developed Hageman extremely well throughout the year because early in the year he looked awful, and then towards the end he was splashing on everyone with snaps.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like Brian Cox. I think he needs to come back. I think he's the right kind of coach, right kind of man you need. I would definitely keep Mike Tyson, Wade Harmon, the offensive line guys. You can't pay enough to keep them. Like, you have to keep them. There's nothing you can say to me that'll be like, no, don't keep these guys. You have to keep Tyson Harmon.
They would be the top two guys on my list, too.
Looked the best it had in years.
Yeah. They would be the top two guys on my list. I think everybody else I could probably take or leave. There would be, like, Tim Lewis I'd probably keep. But everybody else, I'm like, you probably get someone who's just as good. Yeah, that includes Terry Robisky.
Yeah, I was going to say, Terry Robisky is the last one who I would definitely keep. Just because he's been doing it for so long. Roddy, Julio, they love him. The wide receivers looked better than they had in their careers under Robisky. They continually get better. So, I mean, yeah, Roddy probably had his worst season, but even he was still running routes better throughout the year. He continually improved technically throughout the year. His issue is that he's old and decrepit, and he's getting to that point where he's got to be a slot or a number 4 in an offense at this point. It's not his fault it's not Robisky's fault that Roddy's aging.
I would say with Robisky, like it's not a knock against Terry Robisky, but I wouldn't mind seeing him gone. I mean, I think you kind of need to shake up that wide receiver core. I think it's gotten a little too, you know, buddy buddy. I want to see, those guys get challenged a little bit more. And I think if you gave him a new assistant wide receiver coach, that would do that. But if Robisky stays, I'm not going to complain either. So
That's really my view on it. It's like I just really like Terry Robisky.
that's fine. Yeah, I don't have any issue with Terry Robisky. He's been here what 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not change? I mean, it's not like Julio Jones is going to start sucking or anything like that. So I could coach Julio Jones and it'd be great. But yeah. So
Yeah, but you still want a guy who understands the position, knows the ins and outs, of what it really takes to become a great player. I mean, I think Terry Robisky.
I would be more in favor of Terry Robisky if some of these undrafted guys had actually developed over the last several years. Guys like James Rodgers and Eric Weems and Darius Johnson and Bernard Reedy and all these types of guys that we've kind of had a revolving door on the back end of the roster. Drew Davis. So
Again, I hate to say it, but why is that on Robisky? It's not his fault that no draft pick was spent on a wide receiver outside of a fifth rounder on the ever injured Kerry Meyer his entire time.
Again, I'm not trying to sit here and say that Robisky's at fault for that, but I'm saying, like, to me, you can get another coach in here that can basically not develop undrafted players. I mean, it's not like we give Robisky credit for Julio Jones. We don't really give Robisky credit for lighting the fire under Roddy White, and Harry Douglas is basically the same player he was when we drafted him. So I'm like, what really are we saying is great that Robisky has done other than his reputation?
I don't know. I think that if you can find a guy who's as good, let me know. That's all I'm saying.
So, Scott, we talked about 6 coaches. Are there any other guys that you want to see added to the list of possible coaches that the Falcons will go after?
I mean, the list that the Falcons are going after was basically the short list that I intended. The only other guy that I personally would want added is Keith Armstrong.
Okay.
And I know he's an internal candidate. I know he's a special teams coach. Like, I realize that it might sound crazy to go with a special teams coach, but his unit always excels. He's one of the best coaches out there. He is, again, you watch that one scene from Hard Knocks where he says, "Who the hell you think you are?" Like, it doesn't matter who you are, you still try on special teams. Rashid Hageman, Jonathan Massaquoi, whoever he's talking to. That's the kind of guy you need as a head coach. Because he doesn't give a fuck who these guys are. He's going to put his foot up their ass.
Mm-hmm. I know we had a mailbag question not that long ago about who would be on our short list for coaches. I do remember having Gase and Quinn on that list. I can't remember who else. I think I named like 4 guys, but I can't remember who else I picked. So I don't really have anybody off the top of my head that I'd be like, yeah, maybe Ray Horton.
That was the other name that I'd be like, yeah, it'd be nice to see him, but he didn't really do anything this year.
Yeah.
As an assistant. But again, can I really blame him for not having the right fits for his defense?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every other defense he's touched has been gold. So, it's bound to have one hiccup, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just a transition year for them, too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Scott, we got like 7,000 mailbag questions. So you want to get to those?
Sure. Can I just do a quick guys I don't want to see anywhere near Atlanta?
Okay, go ahead.
Search. All right, Jack Del Rio.
Okay.
Hell no. Mike Smith Part 2, hell no. Rod Marinelli, again, no.
Okay.
Harry Fuel, again, no. There was another one. Oh, yeah, Pep Hamilton.
Okay.
The next person who suggests that Pep Hamilton should be a head coach in the NFL needs to go back and watch the way the Colts sucked between the 20s this year. Yeah, the red zone offense got better, but the rest of the entire offense was one of the most poorly schemed units I've ever seen. I do not want Pep Hamilton anywhere near the Atlanta Falcons. The only reason why the Indianapolis Colts are as good as they are is because Andrew Luck wins in spite of Pep Hamilton.
Okay. Well, there you
So
go.
I can't stand the idea that people think that he's a good coach.
Okay. So, Stephen Brooklyn, I think we answered your question about the top 3 assistant coaches we'd like to see retained. So we'll skip that one. Um, Jesse Lalamindra has 2 questions. His first one says, Blank said that he is still evaluating everything. Do you believe Dimitrov will be fired?
I don't think Dimitrov gets fired. I do think his role gets reduced to where he's not the final say on personnel anymore. I think whoever the new head coach is going to have the final call in a situation similar to Philly when they had Andy Reid and Tom Heckert. Basically, Andy Reid was like, I want this kind of player, and Heckert went out and got it for him. That's what it was. Or like Dan Reeves had with Ron Wolf back when the Falcons in 1998 had their best roster. Or one of their best rosters, I should say. But it's basically the vision of the team is the head coaches, and Dimitrov is just the errand boy going out and getting the talent. That this profile of this is a Rex Ryan player, this is a a Todd Bowles player, this is this guy player. That's what his job is going to be. And I think if you give Dimitrov those kind of guidelines, it's similar to him being the director of college scouting for Bill Belichick up in New England. It's that same kind of thing.
Okay. I would say I would be very surprised if Dimitrov gets fired, at least between now and May. Probably the earliest you'll see him if he gets fired is right after the draft, which is usually when GMs get fired and teams make changes to their front office. But my assumption is that Dimitrov will at least last until next year. Then it'll be up in the air. But based off of generally speaking, I think the way Blank is basically saying it, as Scott said, basically if the coach comes in and says no, I don't want to work with this guy, then he'll get fired. But I don't foresee any of these coaches doing that, so I don't think it's going to happen. Jesse asked another question. What would your opinion be of the ideal offseason for the Falcons, including hiring a coach?
Todd Bowles, head coach. Donkey Kong Sue signing. JPP signing. Bringing back Sean Weatherspoon, even though I know he's had some injuries and all that. But the idea of enhancing the the defensive line, bringing back Sean Weatherspoon, running that 34, I think JPP could be a fun fit as a weak outside linebacker. I think between JPP, Massaquoi, that number 8 pick, you've got 3 guys right there who can do a lot. Get everybody healthy. Bring in a strength and training staff that's about injury prevention instead of one that's whatever the hell they are now, because the current strength and training course sucks.
Okay.
I've never seen so many injuries for the Falcons as I have the last 2 years. It's just ridiculous. Bring back Jeff Fish, because none of this happened from 2008 to 2012 with Fish as the strength and training guy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues in Atlanta. Um, Other than that, draft well, sign well, make sure you re-sign Julio long term. The rest of it, it's just depth at that point.
Okay. My ideal offseason would be hiring Terrell Austin as the coach, signing Darrell Revis as a cornerback, and signing Jabal Sheard at outside linebacker. You know,
All pit everything.
yeah, that's my ideal offseason.
All pit everything.
Yeah, just yeah. All right, John Emmett at JDB says, "What would the benefits be of hiring one of these offensive coordinators when the Falcons' glaring weakness is defense?"
It, it's not about who you hire as the head coach because how do I put this? The head coach should be good on both sides of the ball, or at least understanding enough on both sides of the ball to where his attitude can go. Again, Pete Carroll, defensive coordinator by trade. Both sides of the ball have the same attitude: aggressive, attacking, and then right in your damn face, punching you in the mouth every play. And that's what wins games in the NFL. Honestly, if Atlanta could steal Pete Carroll, they should do it because he's a hell of a coach. But there's only one of him.
Yeah, I
So,
would say, you know, hiring an offensive coordinator as head coach doesn't stop him, that offensive coordinator, from hiring a really good defensive coordinator. So, I mean, it would be the same thing if you hired a defensive coordinator. He has to then hire, like we just talked about with Rex Ryan, he has to then hire a good offensive coordinator. So you really can't just basically say, well, we need to get a good defensive coach and then basically just leave the offense alone. Like I think that would work for a time, but that's not going to be to the long-term benefit of the Falcons. You know, there's going to be a point at some point, whether next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, where they're going to need somebody to be able to elevate their offense to the next level. And if your coach can't do that, then what good is he? You know, so you got to find some balance. That's really the benefit of hiring a coach.
yeah.
Okay. Brian O'Hearn asks, which of the Falcons coaching candidates has the best shot to bring in a good counterpart? Following up on that question.
Ooh. Um, that's tough because you don't really know who some of these guys know outside of their current staffs. Like, we don't really know who Todd Bowles has great connections with and who he could bring in as an offensive coordinator. Like, yeah, he played Philly, or not played, he coached in Philly, so maybe he could bring in Juan Castillo or something like that. He coached in Miami, so maybe he could bring in Tony Sperano as his offensive coordinator or as like an offensive line coach or something. You have no idea who these guys really know, and you kind of have to go back and see who they coached with and who might make sense. But he could just hire a random offensive coordinator to go with him too. I think the bigger question is, does it matter who they'll bring with them or who's going to give you the best? Like, the question I'm asking is, does it matter if they know the guy already, or does it matter if they can just put that image out there of, hey, I want this aggressive nature, da 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 da, and they'll bring in a guy who'll bring that. So,
Yeah, I don't. You would have to dig deep because a lot of these when these guys become coaches, they hire guys that they were assistants with, 10 years ago that they got to know, and they were like, if I, they made promises to each other, like if I ever become a head coach, I'm hiring you as my offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, or vice versa. I guess if I had to throw a name out there, I would say Todd Bowles, just on the off chance that he could bring Tom Moore to Atlanta as the offensive
oh
coordinator.
my God, that'd be
But
great.
yeah, That would be the first thing that came to mind. But I don't even know that Tom Moore's like retired twice, so there's no guarantee that he would leave Arizona to coach somewhere else. But hey, there's a shot, I guess.
I mean, I'd love to see like a coaching. Ooh, this guy's coaching, but when you've got guys who've been coaching since 1995 to now, I mean, he was on that Green Bay Packers 1995-1996 Mike Holmgren staff. Todd Bowles. He's on like 6 different coaching trees. So it's like we're exactly slot him in. Like he coached with Mike Nolan and the Jets back in 2000. Does he retain Nolan as a defensive coordinator? Like there's so many different things. It's just like who does he like as a coach? Who does he want? What's his view? And you worry about the rest of it. I think the best image of what you want the Falcons to be, though, is Todd Bowles.
All right. Our good friend Devontae Hughes at A Box of Cookies. Which potential coach do you think will get the Falcons to draft better, keeping or firing TD?
I mean, I think if you get a guy exactly like what Arthur Blank described, aggressive, adaptive, willing to scheme the players to how they want to be, motivating, it doesn't matter who TD drafts. As long as he drafts guys that coach likes. Again, I think Atlanta is restructuring their team to where Thomas Dimitroff is going to have almost the exact same role, except the head coach is like, hey, this is who I want, go get him. As opposed to TD going, hey, this is who I want to get you. Is it cool? Do you think we should get this guy, or should we go with a different player type? Because
sorry.
If it was up to me, I would keep Dimitroff and let go.
I would say I know Bowles, Gase, and McDaniels, when they first kind of broke into the NFL, they were like scouting assistants. So I would assume that they have a little bit of a better background in personnel. Obviously, that didn't work out in McDaniels' favor in Denver when he had a lot of control over their personnel for the year and a half that he was there. So I guess Gase or Bowles, but I don't know if they, I don't know if that means anything. But I would just say that just because they spend a year or two working in the scouting department, that maybe they have a little bit better handle on what it takes to draft good guys.
Well, the difference with a guy like Gase is 35, 36 years old. He's a young dude. This might not be his year. He might have to spend a couple more years really making a name for himself. Because, his second year as a head coach, or as an offense coordinator, I should say?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you trust him.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Now, the other option is, can you go and look at some of these other staffs that are basically getting canned, and can you see a guy like Todd Bowles bringing in Greg Olson?
Mm-hmm.
From I thought he did a great job. Anybody who can make Josh Freeman look like a competent quarterback does a great job.
Fair point. Yeah, I would agree. Jake Alvarado asks, what players on defense get released, resigned, and who would you like in free agency and a draft? Do you have any other names to add to the list that we've already talked about, Scott?
All right. I'm just going to go through this quickly. Released, I think Tyson Jackson should get released. And that is about it. Maybe Mata retires. Re-signed, I think you try and get back Corey Peters. I think you try and get back Sean Weatherspoon. I think you try and get back McClain, Arenas, and Wilson if they'll all come in for a cheap contract, like what they had last year. Just obviously competition in depth, and then after that, don't worry about it. Like, then you worry about drafting.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I think everybody, as Scott said, in free agency, you got to get one of those pass rushers. I said Sheard, but you can get Arakpo, you can get Morgan, you can get Hughes. If JPP's not tagged, yeah, get him. Houston's almost definitely going to get tagged. I heard that the Eagles are trying to wrap up Brandon Graham, so he's probably going to be off the market by the time that free agency rolls around. So he's probably gone. But those are the main things. If you can improve nickel cornerback, I bring Wilson back maybe on a 1 year deal. McLean back to play special teams. Lowry, bring him back. Yeah. So, and then draft good players, and that's basically. I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can get Ndamukong Suh and Jabal Sheard, that's going to be a great. That would make the defense that much better, especially if Hagen plays his potential. Because then you've got two monsters and Paul Soliai. And Paul Soliai doesn't have to be the best man on that defensive line anymore. He'll be the third best man on the defensive line.
Okay, we got 3 questions from Tyler T. Classard. Is Scott going to cry when the new head coach realizes Warlow is bad at football?
Tyler, are you going to cry when Warlow comes in and Todd Bowles' scheme and he gets 8 sacks in the middle of the defense and looks good at football because he's got a scheme that actually fits his talents?
Hey, Tyler, hit us back with that answer. Tyler also asks, my question to Aaron, if I buy you a Massaquoi or Ishmael jersey, will you wear it? Yes, I will wear a free Massaquoi or Ishmael jersey. I do need clothes to eat chicken wings in on game days, so I can just spill chicken wing sauce all over it and not wash it, and just let it,
Oh, man, it'd be the worst smelling mildewy jersey ever.
Yeah, I would wear it. I would wear it. I don't, despite my criticism of those 2 guys, I don't think they're bad football players. I just think people tend to overrate them. I think they're role players. Tyler's real question is the players you think will benefit the most from a coaching change.
Who's the coach? Like that's the real question. Once we get the coaching involved, like Rex Ryan or Todd Bowles, the players that benefit most are Rashid Hageman, Jonathan Massaquoi, Paul Warlow, Desmond Trufant by far, because he's going to actually have a pass rush. Desmond Trufant had 5 picks the last 2 years with that much pass rush and dropped a whole lot more. I could just imagine Trufant with an actual pass rush where the quarterbacks are making bad throws to where he can actually catch the ball. Hell, he could have 6, 7 interceptions. Or just a coach that pulls him to the side, smacks him on the helmet, and goes, learn how to friggin' catch.
Yeah, I agree. It depends on the coach. Like, Matt Ryan wouldn't benefit at all from Rex Ryan being a coach, but he would benefit probably a ton from Adam Gase. I would say Hageman would probably benefit a lot if Dan Quinn was a coach, because Dan Quinn did wonders for Red Bryant's career, and I think that's the player that Hageman compares to most. Yeah, it would, but I guess in general, just take anybody who's young, who has talent, like Robert Alford, and say, yeah, he'll benefit from coaching. You take Ryan Schrader, if they keep Mike Tice, he'll benefit from who the next coach is. Yeah, so I guess that would be my answer.
I think that offensive line as a whole next year will benefit just from help of Ollie. Matthews, Blaylock, Hawley, Asamoah, and Ryan Schrader line, I think does way better next year than any line Atlanta put out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can stay healthy all year, Matt Ryan will have a nice, clean pocket for most of the season.
At Matt Stars asks, thoughts on a Ryan restructure similar to Brady, and where we could go in free agency.
I don't know why you need a Ryan restructure similar to Brady. The cap, cash, any of that doesn't make sense to do. Like from a financial standpoint, the reason why Brady had to do it is because the Patriots were maybe $5 or $6 million under the 15 cap. So by him doing that restructure, they're now like 30 million under. They can compete for some free agents. They can keep a lot of their expiring contracts. That's why Brady did it. Atlanta doesn't have anywhere close to that same problem. So I don't see it as a smart move by any means. It doesn't make any sense. And Matt Ryan doesn't have a big enough cap number next year to really make it worth doing. I just from the money side, it doesn't make any sense. And honestly, doesn't really make sense for Tom Brady unless he wants one more year and then he's retiring. But
I would say the only reason you would restructure Matt Ryan is if you're going to throw out a huge contract to like someone like Sue or someone like Revis. But then again, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're kind of pushing back cap situation. You're increasing the chances that somewhere down the road, 3-4 years down the road, you're going to be in some salary cap hell. So I think you basically have what 35 million or so that they can spend in free agency. If you need more money than that, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Like even if Atlanta's re-signs are a little bit more expensive than average, you're still looking at like $22-23 million to spend on outside free agents after re-signing everybody. That's a lot of money to go out and get free agents with.
Yeah. If you need more money than that to sign the guys that you need to sign, then you're probably doing it wrong. You're probably being Dan Snyder and just paying ridiculous contracts to people.
Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't make sense. The cap side of things, unless you are going out and getting Ndamukong Suh and paying him $20 million a year over 6 years, something stupid like that, it's pointless.
Yeah. Okay. Matt has another question. He asks, where do we go in the first and second round? We need impact. Are we good on Alford?
All right, first things first. Alford, yes. Love how he plays. Absolutely love how he plays. Needs to get more disciplined, but I think a defensive-minded coach will kind of smack him around a little bit and be like, hey, this is how you play the game. Don't bite on this. Teaches him a couple of nuances he needs to learn. I do think he improved with that throughout the season, though. You even saw him improve in one game in Baltimore on the exact same go-round. You saw it 3 times in the game. The first time got burned for a touchdown. The second time, he got a knockaway. The third time, he got an interception. Now, that's not progression. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I think we're more than good on Alford. Alford had a much better season than I thought he was going to have. I know he had his ups and downs, but I thought he was going to have a lot more downs than he eventually did have. We kind of knew when Alford was drafted that he wasn't going to be a guy that was going to immediately hit the ground running and be this great player, that he was going to, he had some technique issues that he needed to work. He has some awareness issues that he needs to work on. He still has, but, I think he's right on point. He's ahead of schedule. As far as that goes, if the Falcons have any concern at cornerback, it's with the nickel cornerback. And it's, getting a guy that, either if you're going to keep Alford on the outside or keep Trufant, from whatever you're doing, shadowing, whatever, then you need someone who can play outside or inside. Basically they got to figure out what they're going to do with Trufant and Alford. Are they going to shadow those guys or are they going to just post them on the outside? If you post them on the outside, you got to get a better slot corner than what we have. Because even though Josh Wilson had a pretty good year this year, you can't count on Josh Wilson. If anybody can tell you that, you just look at Josh Wilson's career. He has one good year in every place he's at, Seattle, Baltimore, and Washington, and then he's not good after that. If you're going to shadow guys around, then you need a guy that can play both inside and outside. So at the third corner, depending on how you match up. So that's the situation. Where do we
Now,
go first and second round? You go defense. I probably outside linebacker or edge rusher, and maybe inside linebacker.
so that's what I would say. I'd say if you don't re-sign Weatherspoon, you have to get a coverage linebacker in the top 2 rounds. Um, my favorite guy in this year's draft for that is Denzel Perriman. Now, if you re-sign Weatherspoon, I think you've got enough wiggle room at least where you could take a guy in the third like a Jake Ryan, or a guy in the, or not a guy in the fourth like Jake Ryan, or a guy in the third who's pretty solid. I'm just trying to figure out who that is right now. You do have another need that I think needs to be filled this year, and that's tight end.
Okay.
I think Matt Ryan really missed having Tony Gonzalez out there. I think if there's a guy he's not Tony Gonzalez by any means, but he's like Jason Witten in terms of his potential, with a lot more athleticism. I would say give Max Williams, if you can, at the top of the second round. And in the first round, whatever pass rusher fits the new defensive coordinator scheme the best. Whether it's Dante Fowler, Shane Ray, Vic Beasley, Randy Gregory, whoever the hell the best pass rusher is, go get him. There's like 10 guys you can take at 8 that everybody would be happy with. So, whoever it is, just take him.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Adam Holloway, our last question. Should Rex be the guy for the Falcons? I think we've already answered that question. But do you think the Falcons should get a ball hawking free safety?
I would love a ball hawking free safety. Where can we find one? Earl Thomases don't grow on trees. Landon Collins is not even Earl Thomas. Landon Collins is meh. So there's not anybody who you're like, oh my God, this guy is absolutely amazing. This guy is the next ball hawking free safety. This guy's like, that guy is not out there. It's not easy to find. You got Earl Thomas. You had Ed Reed. And that's basically what you would need to have as an improvement on what Dwight Lowery was this year. I thought Lowery did a very good job this year in his multiple role. I'd love to see Desmond Southward become that ball hawk. I would love to see it. I think he's got the athleticism to do it. I think he's got the ability to do it. Aaron may not be a huge fan of his, but he was a project. And I think with the right coach and the right scheme and the right safety coach to help him out too, you'll have a guy in Desmond Southward who could be a 5-6 interception guy playing that deep third. But is that coach out there that can turn him into that? I don't know. Will Atlanta hire him? I don't know. So you've got – it's tough to find that talent. It's tough to find that raw athleticism mixed with the instincts.
Okay. On Southward, when we drafted Southward, I had a feeling that he was going to be a 2-year project before we could actually count him to start. And based off of how he played as a rookie, I feel like that's going to be the case. I think the original plan maybe was to have him redshirt this year and then replace Lowry next year, but I don't think he's ready for that yet. Maybe in 2016. As for the ball hawking safety, the new trend in the NFL typically is to take bigger, stronger, physical corners and move them to safety. So if that's that's probably going to be your best avenue. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that's going to be a free agent that fits that mold. Maybe there's somebody in the draft, but I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of doing draft homework, so I wouldn't even know that. But that would probably be the best. Obviously, if you can get a better player than Dwight Lowery, then go for it. Lowry's always kind of been more of a stopgap than a long-term solution. So, yeah, if you find that Ed Reed, Earl Thomas type, Jarris Byrd, Buffalo Jarris Byrd, not New Orleans Jarris Byrd, then by all means go for it.
The name to look out for out of all of them, and I've been watching a little bit more of his film. There's a guy, and don't laugh at his name because it's a Key and Peele name, fresh out of Key and Peele. Jaquiski Tart out of St. Person.
You say not to laugh made me laugh.
I mean, his name is awful, but his play is fun to watch. I've watched him drop in the blocks. Again, his name made me go, you know what? I want to see this guy play. He can't catch. He suffers from Desmond Trufant syndrome.
Okay.
But I'm okay with that because he can play the ball in the air. So I'd like to see him come in. He doesn't have the interception numbers in college and make, oh my God, this guy's got that ability. But on film, he's got the speed. He's a big guy too. He's like William Moore size. He looks like William Moore Jr. is what he looks like to me.
Okay, it's very high praise.
So he could go a lot higher. I'm excited to see him at the Senior Bowl. And then the other guy is Jerron Smith out of Fresno State, who, similar guy, and everybody's talking about this Gerard Holloman guy, but he can't tackle. So if you want Thomas Deku Part 2, go for it. But I don't have a high grade on him.
Okay. All right, Scott, that is our show. We tried to get through all your mailbag questions. We had so many that maybe a few slipped through the cracks. We apologize. But send those in. Use the hashtag Falcons Mailbag. We'll be sure to get those. Send it to the show's Twitter account at FalconsPFC. Scott's on Twitter at Scott Karasik. I'm on Twitter at FalconFans. Be sure to hit up our boss that you don't see anymore at PF Central. And we will be coming back next week. Probably won't be talking about a hire, but we'll be talking about maybe a second interview for somebody, which will be telling who they're kind of narrowing their sights on. They usually interview guys twice before they hire them. At least that's what traditionally Blank has done. So that will be something to watch for.
I agree. And I'm hoping that by this time next week it does clarify quite a bit. So, and another week, Falcons fans, hopefully we have semi-closure.